Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I am thrilled to have you join us for our webinar today. Today's topic is freelance usage to freelance maturity, and we will be discussing how procurement and HR teams can turn external talent into an strategic advantage. I am so grateful to have three amazing speakers today who will provide their experiences and best practices when it comes to freelance maturity, common operational challenges, and practical steps to move forward. A few logistics, I know it was covered in terms of asking questions through Slido. That's a new feature within WebEx. So you want to make sure that you click on the Slido feature. You could submit questions. We absolutely encourage questions throughout the webinar, and we do have time at the end to make sure that we're covering those Q&As. If we do not get to your question, we will follow up with you afterwards. And if you need to change any audio outputs, feel free to do so by clicking next to audio and then selecting the speaker that you wish to use. Additionally, slides will be available and sent out to all registered attendees in about 2 business days. So as many of you are aware, SIA is a global research and advisory firm focused on staffing and workforce solutions. And this is done through our research, advisory services, conferences and events, editorial content, and certification and training. And our memberships consist of both enterprise buyers and suppliers of workforce solutions. A friendly reminder for those of you who are CCWP certified, today's webinar is worth one continuing education credit. This webinar is open to all. However, just a reminder that our CWS Council members are those that will have access to the research mentioned today. We are so excited for the upcoming CWS Summit Europe conference happening in London in May, which is almost May, unbelievable. The theme this year is Insight, Innovation, and Impact. And I've seen the agenda. It's going to be incredible. You definitely don't want to miss it. So more information at the link provided there. Here is just a partial list of our incredible council members, and we are so grateful for them. They allow us to really do what we do. And now is the time to nominate a contingent workforce program game changer. So the Game Changer Awards provide industry recognition for individuals making an impact within their organization. So please nominate someone within your group or perhaps even yourself. Nominations are due May 7th. And now, what you've all been waiting for, are incredible speakers. So I am thrilled to be joined today by Raphael Beganel, Head of Content and Strategic Insights with Malt, Carolina Bittencourt, Global Procurement Lead for Talent at UCB, and Lucas Romer, Head of Client Solutions and Partnerships with Malt. So thank you all for being here, and you guys will definitely hear some great information from each one of them. I'm going to briefly cover the agenda. I'm not going to read through this because we want to get into all of the good stuff that we have to share today. So we will be covering several different points, as I said, related to really ensuring freelance maturity within your program. And now a little bit of SIA research. It wouldn't be an SIA webinar without a little research. So I wanted to share some key insights from my perspective and my research to help us get started. So as you can see, we are continuing to see significant growth in freelance usage. So there are approximately 5.3 million freelancers in the US. From a global lens, we are seeing revenue under IC freelance engagements. It's the highest among all contingent labor categories, excluding SOW. So with the largest usage occurring in Europe, and followed by the US. Europe, which includes data from over 20 countries, has the highest concentration of freelancers globally. And it actually equates to about 25% of their total contingent workforce revenue in that region. So as you can see, for buyers that are really seeking that top tier expertise, this is absolutely a talent source that we really can't ignore at this point. Additionally, from the freelance management system landscape that was conducted in Q4 of last year, Marketing creative, I don't think it's a surprise here. We're really continuing to see them lead in freelance usage. But I will say, IT and consulting and strategy is making significant strides in terms of growth. Raphael, are you seeing similar trends with your clients in terms of industries?
Yes, Caitlin, definitely. This is really aligned with our internal research and internal data for the top families. This is really the distribution we observe, and especially for marketing creative and IT, we look at it very closely because we know that AI is developing very fast and impacting all categories. And the IT expertise especially is going to be weighing more and more because freelancers are definitely the ones leading the charge in terms of skill shift and upskilling on that aspect. So the skills that companies are looking for and that will become corporate standards tomorrow are being right now acquired by freelancers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I want to share just a little perspective on kind of the overall contingent workforce gig economy. It is growing significantly. So we have estimated that the value or worth in US dollars in 2024 of the contingent workforce was $10.2 trillion. So as you can see, SOW has grown exponentially. It is, of course, the largest. However, you also can see that IC freelancers account for 1.9 trillion or 19% of the total value of the overall contingent workforce, which is mind-boggling at this point. Lucas, I would love your thoughts. There's that little circle at the bottom corner I want to make sure we don't miss. Will you speak a little bit to that and kind of your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Caitlin. And this is for us, Malt, as being one of these freelancer talent platforms that we are, right? The 1% that you can see at the bottom is one of the reasons why Malt exists, right? Because we know there's this big bucket of spent independent contractors, freelancers, that are currently probably buried somewhere in your workforce programs in the contingent workforce category or in the SOW category. And what we see with lots of enterprise organizations is that they don't have transparency about this giant bucket of spend, right? And this is where talent platforms become so handy to make that spend and also these kind of people and that talent really visible in your program. Next to these existing absolute numbers of the market sizes, so what we are trying to do at Malt is also we do our own research in terms of how the freelancer market is developing at the moment. And here we have been aligning on the methodology on how to calculate if the market is growing or not together with Roland Berger. And we have been seeing that in these selected European and US countries that you see on this slide over the last 5 years, so these are 5-year growth rates, freelancer markets basically have been exploding, right? So you can see, for example, in Switzerland, the market has almost doubled in 5 years. And when I say the market, what I mean is how many people are actually registered as freelancers and how many of them are actually considered what we call high-skilled white-collar freelancers. And that's kind of the category that we consider as part of our Malt community. Those people are people that have been working in enterprises before for several years. Those people are independent consultants that have been working with McKinsey, Bain, BCG before. Those people are experts in AI, machine learning engineers, right? And those are people that are now choosing to be freelancers and are trying to look for projects in enterprise businesses. And those are exactly the ones that we see in our Malt community. And that's exactly the category that we saw before, which is growing quite heavily. A few words before we continue on Malt. For those of you who do not know Malt, we are actually happy to see the map slide again. Thank you. We're actually the largest freelancer marketplace in Europe. So we have by now more than 900,000 freelancers registered on our platform in our community. The largest portion of them are actually registered in Europe and the Middle East. We have more than 1 billion project volume that we have been running through our platform last year. We have more than 500,000 projects that have been run on Malt since its existence. And we are primarily focusing on the enterprise segment, right? So more than 90% of our revenues actually stem from enterprise businesses. So we are basically a platform that tries to also nail the compliance and also the integration into the processes and system landscape of enterprise customers. So with Malt, we have been dealing with freelancers for over 13 years now. One of our key competencies is how enterprise businesses actually can make better use of this exciting type of talent, right? What we are doing on a regular basis with our clients is to consult them on how to set up a freelancer program. And our methodology for that is what you can see on this slide. So we have developed this model on how you can start accessing freelancer talent and how you can make best use of them. And we've divided that into 6 different categories that we try to set up when working with an enterprise client. So first of all, you can see at the very top here, there's the strategy and enablement dimension. So this is when we talk about, okay, you need to be intentional of your way of how you want to make use of freelancers. So when you consider adding freelancers as a category talent or type of talent to your recruiting or external workforce or HR strategy, you need to be sure about what you want to get out of that. Most of our customers actually think about freelancing as something that brings innovation impulses to the company and that adds capabilities to your company that you might want to borrow, right? Instead of building it or buying it, right? Then you can see at the bottom, there's a layer on governance and compliance. So this is an important one, right? So you want to include a category inside an external workforce program, and especially with regards to compliance, you want to make sure that freelancing doesn't become a risk for your company. So this is where we also advise our clients, okay, you need to set up a compliance framework to actually make sure that you staff freelancers in a compliant way according to local labor law. And then you have these 4 dimensions in the middle, which are basically a bit more operational. And here we can see, okay, we are talking about hiring manager enablement. This is a category on where we see, okay, enterprise organizations need to learn when does it make sense to use a freelancer and how to use a freelancer compared to other types of talent. So when should I be going to a freelancer? When should I be relying on temp workers, for example? This is what we mean with hiring manager enablement, among other things. An important factor is freelancer experience. So this is when we talk about how attractive is your organization actually for the most sought after freelance talents that we have in our community. Just to give you a perspective, right? So the main or the highest performing freelancers in our community, they get more than 60 project requests a year. So basically 1 project request every week. Some do even get even more, right? So some do even get more than 100 project requests a year, right? So those are the people that are in high demand, and those are the people that really add a lot of value and add a lot of capabilities and add a lot of innovation impulses to your organization. How are you attractive as a company to those kind of people, right? This is what we mean with freelancer experience. Do you pay them quick enough? Do you make sure that they have an onboarding? Do you make them feel welcomed? Do you do a proper offboarding with them? Do you allow for a good collaboration between your hiring managers and your business and the freelancers? This is freelancer experience. Third, process and automation. How do you actually make sure that engaging external talent and freelancers specifically doesn't become a burden and an administrative effort that prevents people from actually making use of this type of talent? And the last part, once again, is more about administrative work or the external workforce program. How do you make sure that freelancing is actually something that you can report on, that you can measure, that you can compare to other types of talent, and which channel statistics can you actually capture for this type of talent? Now, this is the methodology that we're running. And now imagine you would be able to actually score an enterprise organization on exactly those dimensions. So imagine that you can go through each of these dimensions and you can say, okay, your organization in terms of freelance experience is at an 8 out of 20 score, right? And this is exactly what we did with something what we call the Freelance Maturity Survey. And this is what we want to talk about a bit in the following sections. I'm handing over to you, Rafael. I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thank you, Lucas. What you've been detailing about this freelance management program and the 6 pillars is exactly the methodology we used and based our first of its kind freelance maturity report. It's been some time already that in our discussions with companies and even quite a few freelancers and consultants, we were observing this reality of a disparity between companies on how they were working with freelancers and consultants. And this actually matters because right now, as of today in 2026, and it's been the case already for some time, it is no longer if you are working with freelancers, but how do you work with them? Any company, especially in Europe, you said it, Caitlin, any company is working with freelancers in quite a significant way. So now it's how do you leverage the way you work with them to make it a competitive advantage. And there is also actually a risk of not doing so. And with this report, we were looking at framing this reality, formalizing it, and having, through a custom research with SIA, 140 global organizations surveyed over a wide range of industries, asking hiring managers, decision makers, especially in HR and procurement, to have their strategic view on this topic, to ask them to answer the survey across all the 6 pillars, have their scoring, and then be able to assess 3 different levels of maturity, what they were made of, and then, of course, the best practices for companies to be able to leverage these insights and to improve on these topics and move from one maturity level to another, or at least understand on which pillars they need to work on the most. Is it performance and reporting? Is it freelancer experience? Or is it this power couple, HR and procurement, that matters so much, and then centralized governance for this overall France management to work and to actually give out this ROI that we do observe strongly in the leaders that actually build solid freelance management programs.
So if you actually, if you actually take a look at the results that we can see from that survey, you can paint a little nice radar or spider chart that we could see on the right-hand side here, right? And you saw on the slide before, we have been categorizing the enterprise organization that we surveyed with this custom research into these 3 different buckets, right? So those are who are especially mature when it comes to freelancer programs. Those are the trailblazers, the red bar, and the navigators somewhat in between, and then also the explorers, the ones who are least mature in terms of setting up a freelancer program. And you can see and recognize these 6 categories that we have been observing in our little house model earlier. You will find them again as the categories on this radar chart right here. So you have freelancer experience at the top, governance and compliance at the bottom, and so on. Now, if you look at this radar chart, there are a couple of things here which kind of surprised us when we did the research and when we looked at the results, right? So first of all, I think you can see that even the most mature companies, in terms of this ranking, are not very mature, right? And I think this is something where we see, okay, there's this big bucket of spend. We saw that earlier. As second biggest bucket of spend is on freelancers, independent contractors. At the same time, not a lot of companies are actually very mature in how to handle engaging these type of people, right? So this might become a concern, but this is also where we see, okay, freelancer platforms like Malt are trying to actually get into the space and trying to bring transparency and control over exactly these type of people. The second thing that surprised us is that freelancer experience seems to be lacking the most, right? So you can see here in our definition of what makes up a good freelancer experience, not a lot of companies are actually thinking about freelancer experience in the first place, right? So this is one of our educational tasks that we are doing, is to also represent freelancers as a group of community, as a group of talent with our enterprise customers, right? To make them aware, if you want to attract this highly and quickly growing category of people outside of your company, then you need to make sure that you are attractive for this, right? And this is one important step of what we're doing with our customers to actually make sure that they are becoming more attractive, to close that gap in terms of maturity to what we see on the market and what freelancers actually expect. And then I think one important thing in there is hiring manager enablement, right? So when you consider hiring manager enablement, is how easy do you make it for your business users to actually engage freelancers? Not only engage freelancers, but actually take a decision on whether they should be going for freelancers or not. It's somewhat linked also to the strategy piece, right? when to make use of freelancers, for what kind of purpose. You need to educate your business of how you can make best use of this type of talent. And this is exactly one thing that we want to highlight today, is this kind of hiring manager enablement piece, where we see there's a big gap of what we see, how you can enable your hiring managers in enterprise organizations to what we think is a very good enablement of hiring managers to guide them to the right direction. And to actually get into this route, we want to focus on the hiring manager enablement category today, on one specific thing in there, which we think is one of the cornerstones of not only setting up a good freelancer program, but setting up a total talent management strategy. And to maybe start off, we want to start with one question that we also asked in the survey right here in the poll, but I'm handing over to you, Caitlin.
Absolutely. So I think the visual you just shared in terms of that spider chart is so interesting because you can see consistencies regardless of maturity, but you can also see, significant variation and, where even organizations that feel they are the most mature really have room to grow there. So I think that's really a very cool visual. So we do want to kick off a poll and make sure that the audience has a little participation here. So the poll itself, the question, does your organization have a process and criteria to help hiring managers select the right type of external support? So whether that's permanent employee, freelance, staff augmentation, temp worker, based on the specific work they need to deliver. So the Slido should be popping up. If you could go ahead and answer that, I think that we will have some really cool insights on that as well.
There's already a rather strong, it's moving a bit, but for now it's really on yes, interacting with procurement and HR, which is actually quite positive in terms of result.
Yeah, exactly. I was noticing that as well. So the trends are still trending, which is good. And we will
I'm sure
give
that
you...
many people in our audience know this kind of interaction with procurement and HR, right? So advising business on the right classification of talent probably eats up lots of our times.
Yeah, I think this is an area that we're seeing further development and growth because of this exact need I like how you put it as hiring manager enablement. I think that that's a really great way to kind of classify that for sure. So we are definitely seeing trends, and I'm going to move over to your next slide. So we have, looks like, no, we do not have a process or criteria. So on that far end, about 8%. We have yes, referring to documented guidelines at about 29%. Yes, interacting with procurement and HR at 58%. So that is absolutely the highest. And 4% are saying yes, using an AI-enabled tool.
And I think, first of all, thanks for taking the poll, right? I know it's also a rather long question, so it gets you a while to actually think about that. What we can see here with the results that we have in the poll, it's basically the same picture as what we got out of the survey, right? So basically, you're in good company next to all of these 140 large enterprise organizations that we have been serving. You can see the result of our survey on this slide, right? And we have been showing you here exactly the same answers that you were seeing in the poll. And you also saw how the most mature companies, the red bar, the trailblazers, how they have answered. And you can also see how the least mature companies, the explorers, have been answering. And you can see here the distribution, right? So most of the companies are still relying on people interacting with HR and procurement to take a classification decision based on their project needs, right? And you can also see that even the most mature companies, they don't have, I don't know, something like a questionnaire or a guided buying or decision-making process, or even an AI-enabled tool that will guide them throughout that process. So this is where we see, okay, there seems to be a gap of what is already possible to implement in terms of hiring manager enablement to take a right decision. And by the way, not only for freelancing, right, for every type of talent, and what enterprise organizations have implemented so far, right? And we want to shed a bit of light today on this. One answer to actually enable something like this is what we like to call the triage system, what the market likes to call the triage system. You can also call that a centralized need intake system. You can call that a decision-making tree, something like that, right? In essence, what it does is it guides hiring managers very early in the source to pay process, at the first step, basically, to the right sourcing channel and therefore to the right type of talent for their needs, right? So this is kind of the schematic overview that we like to discuss with our enterprise clients in how we can actually make sure that Malt and therefore freelancing as a category finds a good spot in external workforce programs. And we're talking about that because referring back to the title, right? So how you can actually leverage freelancing as part of your external workforce strategy. We're talking about that because we see that enterprise organizations, once they understood, okay, freelancing, that's a big thing, right? Once they see, okay, the types of people that are in there, they understand, okay, they can bring capabilities, they can bring innovation, they can add something to my HR, total talent, external workforce strategy. It's mostly a question about how to actually get this done, right? And this is such an important piece to make sure that we enable the hiring managers to make the right decision, that we are talking about that quite often as Malt. So this is the kind of overview, the operating model that we see. Hiring manager connects to a triage upstream in the process. That triage guides them to the right sourcing channel. Could be the HRIS for permanent employees, could be a freelancer for Malt, could be Malt for freelancing, and so on, right? And then I guess to complete the picture at the very end, but this will not be the focus for today, you need to bind everything back together to make sure that you can report across each of these talents, right? Now this is what we call the triage system. This is what we call good hiring manager enablement. And when you look specifically at the triage system, what we say is it basically consists of 4 elements if you want to introduce one, right? You need to define what's a good logic. When do you guide to permanent employees? When do you guide for project services? When do you guide for temp workers, for freelancers? What are the criteria that you want to take into account? And what's the kind of logic for you to actually bring people to the right spot? Second, you need to talk about where it sits in the process. We have lots of organizations that tell us, okay, we have guided buying in our procurement system, right? That might already be too late, right? Because at that point, they already kind of decided, people going there, that they are going for external talent and not for internal talent. You want to have that as upstream as possible. So you need to make sure that the triage system sits somewhere, ideally mandatory, in the process. Third, the tech, right? Do you have a tool for that? How do you enable your hiring managers to actually make use of the technology that is available today to take a right decision, right? And then fourth, you need to make sure that the triage system, the logic behind that, and the tech that should be used is also being enabled, right? So once again, here change management, moving people to take a decision on the right type of talent is something that probably needs to go along with that. So this is kind of our definition of a triage system, right? So to implement one. And what I would like to cover next, or not even me, but actually I'm handing over to our last speaker in the round, so Carolina, is to say, look, this is something that is already live in practice, right? So organizations implement triage systems. And I'm very happy to have Carolina here, who we are working with as well, to show us how your triage system actually works at UCB Pharma. Handing over to you, Carolina.
Sorry, technical issue to unmute myself. Hi everybody. So yeah, can you all see my screen? I hope you can. So at UCB, UCB is a biopharma company, and as we are growing, we're finding exactly the same challenge that Lucas was explaining. That was hard to keep it up and informing our the wider business the options for assessing talent and to get work done. So this is when procurement and talent acquisition get together to develop our what we're calling our workforce advisor, which does exactly what Malt was showing, directing the business into the options and channels to get work done. So this is basing our policies and our procedures and the channels we have that direct the business to the most optimal channel depending on the need. So I will demo here. This is the landing page where the business and the hiring manager gets into, trying to understand how it works. A few questions. You see your options and then get to the next step. Our triage tool, the triage to diverse channels, internal solutions and external solutions. So I will start demo quickly how it works. So basically, they will answer a question just to name the assessment that they are doing, because on the end they can, if they do multiple assessments, they can easily track by the name. They will tell if there is a preference location where they want the resource to be, and there's logics behind it, depends on the channels that we have in each country that is linked to the logic to score for the option. We also ask the primary reason for the that need, what they're trying to get done. Through the tool, we have a multiple additional information to help the manager, the hiring manager, to understand the options we have available and what they are for. We also ask here specific roles, because in our case, some of those roles are linked to specific buying channels. I'll say no here, and that can shortcut the flow to get the solution and decision. Again, we ask question what they are trying to get done. This question specifically do not drive to any decision for now. That may do in the future when we have more bots and agents that we can kind of push things to. But today, this is just for analytics purpose, that we review what people are trying to get done and which channel that's driving into. Yeah, we was how long is the assessment, the need, so that also drive to different type of channels, help with the logic that goes behind. The skills, if we have skills available or not available at UCB, again, that question do not is linked to logic for decision, but we do use that data to understand what are the skills that people are saying that we do not have at UCB and where they are going to. So we just ask a question. If people say that they don't have it, we ask what type of skills they are looking for. And then we ask how they will define the work that needs to be done. I'll say job description here, because that also help with the logic. Who will be accountable for the work, and this is to do with if we're going to hold the individual or the supplier accountable for it, they also drive the logic on how the decision is made. I would say UCB. And then if they have the right to substitute themselves, say no. What's the most important thing that we're looking for this requirement? I would say fit the suitable skill. And then we ask about budget, the reason for budget, because also this is linked to our policy. Depending on the budget, there is a different type of intervention or different type of process you need to follow. And here we also again question on how people have a budget, because we find that there is difference when people they doing the budget exercise, they sometimes have not been through the tool, so they do the budget exercise considering one type of solution, and then when they come to the tool, they actually push them to a different solution that doesn't match with the budget, and then we have these to make sure that things are following the right place, and budget is aligned with finance, that we can kind of review where budget is allocated in line with how engagement is done. I would say I don't have any budget for now. If I have a pre-ID candidate, I would say no here, and then I complete my assessment. So once I do this assessment, the result page tells me what are my top recommendations. Here I say I know what it is. We track and classify. We have a standard way to classify external workers at UCB, so that's give you the hiring manager the information how they should be classifying this worker when they onboarded. Give links to classification of externals, frequent asked questions, and the next steps. So there he tells exactly what's the next step the hiring managers need to follow. And this is telling in every type of results, telling which channel they should be resourcing. Our internal contingent program called Integrated Talent Acquisition is the buying channel. So that's where they need to go to. They're also giving information how typically things take and the next steps of the process that they need to follow. We also give an option if the hiring manager believes that this option do not suit their needs, they need to contact procurement with the workforce ID to have a discussion and procurement is who can override. In this case, it's procurement who can override because procurement at UCB manage the contingent program, who can override the decision. But if this is a perm recruitment, this is talent who can override. So we have each channel owner can override the decision if you need to. And in this case, the only suitable solution is the contractor, contingent worker, but depending how we respond to our triaging tool, we may have more than one option. And then we have the reference that we use for the next steps. That's it what we are using at UCB, and I hand over back to you, Lucas.
Yes, thank you so much for demoing that, Carolina. And what I would like to show, because what you have been just showing, what you have implemented at UCB already, is quite extensive, right? And it also aims to cover the whole external workforce program, right? And I recognize that this might be, and based on what I'm discussing with other clients as well, this is quite intimidating, right, to start off with. So what we are propagating for is, okay, maybe at the beginning, start a bit smaller. And here I just want to show you a bit of so this is just a proof of concept that we built on the Malt website for an AI-enabled triage system. You might have heard about AI. You might have heard about chatbots that are becoming a bit of a thing. I think this is a perfect example of how we can make use of AI in source to pay, in procurement and HR, right? So I think helping hiring managers, your business out in making the right decisions in terms of talent classification. So what the idea is, okay, you instead of going through a process where you actually ask a person, right? So many of you have said, okay, through an interaction with HR and procurement, they decide which type of talent they should be going for. Instead of, I don't know, raising a ticket, relying on someone sitting next to you or annoying someone on Teams, you could actually chat with a chatbot that has logic embedded into it, right? That has labor law compliance embedded into it, that has your internal procurement guidelines embedded, that has cost benchmarking data embedded as well. And that way, people can actually take a decision by interacting with the chatbot. And how that would look like is exactly what we have been trying to put on this website as a proof of concept here, right? So basically, a business user would come to the chatbot, say, I need a B2B SaaS pricing consultant. And then through an interaction with that AI chatbot, the chatbot will collect a bit more information that it needs to actually take a decision that will help the hiring manager or that will help the AI chatbot for the hiring manager to get a good recommendation. So here it asks, okay, I need more information on the urgency and duration. And here I'm saying, okay, I need that consultant ideally tomorrow, and I need them for a project of about 3 weeks. I need someone very senior in terms of seniority, right? And here I'm saying I need them to work on a well-defined deliverable, no interaction needed with my team, and I can spend 100k euro, 120k euro. And then basically through that interaction, the chatbot will have collected all the necessary information to actually take a more consistent and a more distinct decision on what type of talent it would recommend, right? So then what the chatbot would be doing is to recommend a type of talent, and it also gives a reasoning why it thinks, okay, this is something that makes sense for you, right? It might also give a second piece of or a second level recommendation, right? So this is all what you can determine when you are setting up a chatbot on your own. But basically this gives the hiring manager, or it enables the hiring manager to take the right decision, right? And then at the end, it will guide them to the right sourcing channel, which you can also bake into here. So in this case, by chance, it recommends a freelancer, right? Because of the type of profile you're looking for, because of the urgency, because it's a well-defined deliverable that allows you to also be compliant with local labor law, misclassification risk is low, and also for a cost perspective, this should be enough to attract top-tier freelance talent. So this could be a bit of an alternative to set up, to get started, to get that in front of your business users, to get them start using something like an AI triage, right? And with that, maybe I want to revert back to the slides that we were trying to show. And here we are actually proposing that a more integrated and a more scalable solution like the one that Carolina was presenting, which is super extensive, right? And is covering all bits of the external workforce program. You could start off a bit smaller, right? And you see that POC that we have been putting on the website here. This is something, if you have someone in your company or in, I don't know, your circle of friends or as a freelancer, that someone with AI skills could build you probably in 2 weeks, right? So this technology is allowing you to actually start with an MVP quite quickly. So our approach here would be, if you're thinking about, okay, this is something that makes sense for my business as well, start with an MVP that you can build easily. Use that as a proof of concept. So get that in front of as many business users as possible, and for them to test it, for you to refine the logic, for you to understand what are the concerns that business might have with that, and also for you to collect whether that's actually something that would be valuable for scaling. And once you have done that for a couple of months, then you can go to the market and look for a certain tool that you might be implementing more at scale, right? So and then you can look at similar tools that Carolina was sharing, or I also mentioned some other tools here that you might want to implement at enterprise scale, that you can implement and configure in a way that it makes sense for your whole enterprise workforce. And then you get into scaling mode and you try to embed it in a process in a way that also the triage becomes mandatory, right? That way you can make sure that people are making use of the triage whenever they have a talent need. So for you to get started in starting to, and that's where we were coming from, right? Enabling your hiring manager to allow for, I mean, our perspective is higher freelance maturity, but ultimately this is for your whole total talent maturity. This is how you can start doing that. And this is one important corner piece of what we think is part of a good freelancer program. I think that's everything that we wanted to cover today. Thanks again, Carolina, for showing what you have already implemented at UCB. And with that, probably handing back over to you, Caitlin.
Sounds good. Thank you. I want to just pause on this slide really quickly because I do think for any level of maturity, from an organizational perspective, this is that step-by-step that they can take. I think that, when you think of organizations that use, a significant amount of freelance talent, they had to start somewhere. They didn't just start on this enterprise level. So, if I was a buyer and I was starting to think, I need to access this pool of talent, but I don't even know where to begin. I think that this is a really nice visual and a nice sort of digestible guide to do that. So again, for all of our participants, we will be sending out the slide deck. So I definitely recommend. I think there were some questions before the webinar started that was, how do I even begin? Or, how do I build a business case? Or how do I get started on that? So I think that this in particular is a really a nice way to think about that. So I think that's a great one. So before we get in, if you do have questions, please drop those into the Slido. Again, we will have time for questions if they do come through. Some of the key takeaways, from today, if you're, trying to kind of digest sort of the information that we flowed through. So that freelancer economy is massive and it is continuing to grow as, younger generations enter the workforce. That need for autonomy, that need for, determining their own workloads, working remotely, that's where we're really seeing that significant growth. Most companies are still immature in managing freelancers, and that's really to no fault of anyone. It's just, I think as we start, like Malt presented, the definitions and the pillars, that's information that you can kind of use to determine your maturity and see, where you need to perhaps focus energy or resources to begin to establish and increase your maturity in terms of that management. That multi-pillar approach, again, it requires structure. It's not a simple, going on to a site and finding someone and engaging them. You do need to make sure in order to be successful and really build a freelance management program, you have to take it from a multi-pillar approach. Hiring manager enablement. I love how that is phrased because, I think one manager might be doing something one way, another manager might be doing something a different way. And, there's no communication there or understanding of who's doing what. So I think hiring manager enablement, especially in this solution, is a significant driving point to build maturity and to really get, the right sources of talent engaged within your organization. And then also the idea of being able to redeploy talent that has previously worked for your organization as well. And the idea of triage systems, I think I've heard the term orchestration quite a bit. That's sort of becoming this lovely buzzword. And a triage system fits exactly into that. So how are we building a ecosystem? How are we creating the right tools and using the right tools for the idea of total talent optimization or technology orchestration? So I think that those are some critical key takeaways from today's presentation. It does not look like we have any questions. I'm going to give it just a pause in case something comes through.
And in the meantime, I'd like to say that we'll be sharing both with the participants the report itself, Freelance Maturity Report, as well as the online assessment that we developed. There's a very short one with only a few questions that's only 2 minutes long. And if you want a longer version that's around 10 minutes to assess the full different pillars, it is also possible. And then as a company, you'll be able to get your scoring. And then the whole idea is, of course, about taking the time to interpret it. Of course, discuss with us. We'll always be available and see how you can manage the best freelance management program one step at a time.
That's awesome. Yeah, so here you can see the link that Rafael just described. What a nice gift for everybody on the call. And then we have some additional resources in terms of some of the research that was presented within the document itself. So I want to thank you. I want to thank Malt for your sponsorship and participation. I think this information was critical. Again, it's no longer a will we use freelance talent, it's when do we begin to engage and start to really tap into an incredible pool of expertise and of talent. So thank you all so much. I appreciate the time. We will send out the deck in the next 2 days or so. Again, thank you so much, Malt, and all of our audience members.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.